Located in Ukunda on the southern coast of Kenya, the Diani Sea Lodge is an expansive hotel with lush gardens and a gorgeous slice of the crystal white sands and aquamarine ocean waters that the Kenyan south coast is famous for. It's the perfect setting for this season, so let's live out loud next.
So, are you in a toxic workspace? That's what we'll be seeking to find out in this conversation. But a quick reminder, please click subscribe and hit notifications so you never miss an episode, and we do that every Monday. And joining me for this conversation on toxic workspaces is the MD of Toxic Workspaces, Kangethe. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for making the time and being so patient. Productions are exactly that, productions.
Thank you for having me.
It's not easy zooming between Nairobi and Diani, but you see, a girl's got to try, right? But I've been following your work online, and you speak about issues that are so real and so pertinent to anybody going into the job market. Whether you're going to be self-employed, whether you're going to be employed, you're going to be in the company of other people. And toxicity in the workplace can be so insidious, so much of it has been normalized to the point where people just can't seem to tell the difference. So why did you found Toxic Workspaces?
At a very young age, I started working. You know, when you get a government job at a young age, you're the everything everybody wants to, how did you get there? So the first job I got was toxic, but I did not know what a toxic job was. So as you've said, normalized toxic workspaces, I would conform to what was happening because, toughen up, probably you're young, it gets better, thank God you have a job. So I quit the first job, then I went to another job. So I feel like, I keep saying, it's like from one toxic job to another toxic job. The second one was a Christian organization that was really toxic. Really crazy because I couldn't speak about what was happening. Millennials, you're lazy, all you do is complain. We've been here for years, we don't complain. Thank God you have a job. I got to a point, I quit. Then I got a dream job that was toxic on steroids.
Oh dear.
So led me to depression. I started drinking because of a toxic job, because that was a coping mechanism of people at work. So everybody there would cope. And so they would tell me, instead of complaining, let us show you how we deal with life here. I mean, you can afford to go for therapy because you get paid some good amount of money. So that's how, at some point, by the second year of that job, I had had enough. So I called myself for a meeting and I wanted to understand what was happening. So before I left my job, I did a thread on Twitter and I came out and said my job is toxic. And I think someone picked it up, called me for a forum they were hosting, and they listened to my story. Of course, I did not mention where the company I was working for, but they loved my story and they could relate to it. The thing that made me now form this was, it became a thing. People will now call me and they want to listen and ask me how are you coping and how you deal with it. I just sat down and decided, I went on holiday and decided, let me just do this as an initiative. And it became a thing. So that's how I started Toxic Workspaces.
And it snowballed, and it's incredible, and it's pertinent because the way we work and how offices are beginning to look going forward, not even just as a result of the pandemic, is change was bound to happen. Listening to you speak, when I think about toxicity, there are two things that are really just emerging. There's the issue of gender, toxicity based on gender, and age. Two very crucial variables that you cannot escape in a workplace. So let's talk about the age-skewed toxicity. You've got Generation X's, you've got baby boomers who to some point think you've got to go through process. Toughen up. Go through this thing. We all went through the same thing. Kwani wewe umetengezwa na nini? You can hack this. Stop complaining. Let's talk about your experience as a millennial in that workspace.
my experience has been the best. Let me just be honest. The best in the sense of it's been real. I've walked through it all. I've seen it all from white to let me say from white to now black. And from as a millennial, I identify as a young millennial.
Yeah.
And the first time I got to openly talk about a toxic job, I know it's going to sound wrong because I had a mentor who will say, leave your emotions at the door. That was the first thing they ever told me. Don't bring your emotions at work. Separate you, your emotions, and the work, and then you will be able to focus. I didn't know how to deal with that kind of coping mechanism. And that statement didn't sit well with me because I could see that's why we are the way that we are at work. And the older people at work will sit and tell me, we've been here for years. We need the money. We need to be here. So just be okay. Work for the money. Do what you have to do. I didn't know until now what that means. So when you talk about age, there's a way the baby boomers, I'm known to attack them because I tell them we don't have to go through the struggles they went through to get to where they are. I don't have to prove that I need to be here at work. I don't need to prove that I am better than anyone else. Because what I've seen in workplaces is I have to make sure you look like the bad person for my job to be safe. So they grew up with that culture. But now for us, we believe we are all creative and we can co-live together. Okay. So that is something I've seen the difference. Then there's a Gen Z. I'm not sure I've worked with them much, but I believe they're better than us. They're more vocal. They'll say no. They won't even think about it. Like, you won't treat me like this. So I think we millennials I believe I'm in the middle, where at some point you're like,
right,
okay, I think I have a job. And then I think I don't need to be treated like trash. So there's that balance.
Okay. There's this understanding, and I will say perception, because again, everything is perception until you know otherwise. That there's a sense of entitlement amongst the younger generation in the workplace. You join an office in January, by February you should be in upper levels of management. Is there a problem in managing expectations amongst a younger generation, and is thus quick to term it toxic as opposed to let's just be honest about anything. You're going to put the time in. You're going to go through the ins and the outs, and you will have to put the time in. There's no sidestepping process. Yes, a lot of it, the bullying and the wrong things that will happen will be shrouded under the section process. But you can't take process out of the equation. But is there a sense of, but process, I can bend it to shape my will amongst younger people in the workplace? Is that a myth or somewhat factual?
To avoid controversy and to be safe, I'll say this. Yes, to some extent. But also it depends with your personality.
Right.
We are a generation that believes we are the prize. I've gone to school. I have done my best. I have the skill what you're looking for. So first month I'm here. I'm doing all the hard work. Just promote me. Please, I deserve it. So there's that. And then there's a process where I do not like protocol, honestly. I job hop a lot because I'm looking for that.
Right.
And sorry to say this, I've had this conversation with someone about we're very entitled as millennials, and I almost told them, just come, let's just fight.
Right.
Because I didn't want to accept that is really happening. And I know we are entitled. And then we meet people who teach us that process is supposed to go like this. But because probably we are very entitled, we believe, talk to me nicely. You don't have to, because baby boomers at work expect us to understand, but we don't. So like, for example, my manager used to tell me, I've been here for years. I'm like, why are you not promoted? Do you not want it? He's like, because it's a protocol. I'm like, just ask for it. And he's like, you millennials are young people, but then we will never agree on things like that. So yes, I'd like to say, even if I look at my friends who are now at work, every time we sit and talk, they tell me, that job is really frustrating. I've been there for 6 months and I'm not getting promoted. I'm like,
okay. So you do accept process is process. irregardless. I like how Kenyans create these new words that seem to fit so
Everything.
beautifully. I love it. But process is process. We can't sidestep it. And for the longest time, people have hidden toxic practices under process. I'd like us to define what toxic workspaces look like. For someone who's thinking, is a toxic workspaces, Mrs. Idri, what exactly constitutes a toxic workspace?
A toxic workplace is where you feel every day you wake up and you're like, oh, God. It's where you cannot say comfortably, do you love your job? Do you really love your job? I ask that all the time. Do you really love your job? So I'll be like, it pays my bills. So clearly you've told me. Because if it's a yes, if you love your job, you're like, I really love what I do. But if you don't get that, it's a toxic workplace. Do you grow? How is your mental health at work? Is it good or bad? Do you sleep enough? Do you work on eggshells at work? So if you tick yes to such kind of questions, so you're in a toxic job.
Right. Do you walk on eggshells at work? That's a biggie, yeah? That takes me to the subject of gender. Because if there's a gender that walks on eggshells every day in the workspace, it's women. Women will be faulted for everything. Women, if you look at how much women make every month compared to men still make more money for the same amount of work, if not less, than women. Women have a harder time in workspaces because you remember there was the scandal on Me Too for actresses to get bigger roles, and it snowballed into a bigger movement. And when I think about the local context, women can only go so far. To move into upper levels of management, to break that ceiling for women is very difficult. And enough women today can stand up and tell you a story about how they were told to move next. They would have to put out to move up. There are many women who know what that is. And it's sad because it's no longer about your skill, your merit, your qualifications, your talent, the work you've spent to build who you are and what you are. It comes down to, if you don't give me what I want, you stay where you're going to stay. The way we handle our workspaces, is it ever going to change?
That's hard to talk about because one, when I look at women in the workplace, so I'll take it the levels of first from the top management, private sector, NGOs, private sector, then now government offices. We look at women at work in all those places. It's different. It's very different. Look at the perception we have about women at work. Walk to a government office, you'll find women who are very bitter, they're angry all the time. So that's the first scenario I'll give you. The second scenario I'll give you, women probably who work for NGOs, probably are directors, for example. They have to maintain a specific attitude or personality. You have to have a strong personality to maintain the role because probably the men will try and say you're not competent and kick you out and everything. And also now find other women at work. There's imposter syndrome, that's a lot, but it's because of the culture that is at work. Changing work culture is almost impossible because they don't want to change it. They don't want to make safe spaces for people at work. I asked someone why they don't talk about their toxic workspaces at work with their bosses or with their employer. And they have wellness programs. And they said, you cannot talk about a problem with the problem.
But that's true.
That's true.
That is so true.
Exactly. So they have safe spaces at work. You can come and report anonymously about Me Too or anything that happens at work. But at the end of the day, these things have anyone can access these things, and they see Sheila said that there's that. So it makes it impossible. So we have given you have the power to speak, but you cannot speak. Mm-hmm. So for women, it's really hard. Like we always wake up to feel like we have to fight for our space at work.
Yeah.
Which for me is really hard because they say women are emotional, and they keep bringing facts to argue that women cannot be at top management because the emotional, will not think like they can think. Then they're not distracted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we talk about women at work, I feel like we I don't think we are not even close. I don't think they want it to happen.
Right.
I think we should just try and find ways of living with that harsh and sad reality.
So it is a case where it's still going to be harder for women. The conversations should begin if they haven't yet, and they must continue, and we must agitate for more things to change. HR departments. I can't help but think about your expression. How do I speak about a problem to the problem? I sometimes feel many institutions' HR departments are part, if not the problem. I know a lot of people who have resorted and tried to engage with HR departments and not had problems resolved. In fact, they got escalated. If you share these problems, yet they're supposed to be addressed, you become punished. You get punished for speaking up. Was that something you experienced in your journey?
I had a very good HR, but one thing that I'd like to say openly is I don't know who gave us this idea that HR is always on our side. HR is there to protect the company. So we are entitled to believe HR is the Superman or the Batman for us. Like the way you say, I'll tell mommy. That's what we think HR is, and that's not what they are. HR is there to do their work. And their work is to ensure, okay, Sheila said this happened. This comes out, this company is going to lose money. So how do we salvage this? It's easier to let her go than spoil the company's brand. My HR will be like, okay, this is a safe space, trust me, we'll fix it, I'll get back to you. 2 days later, your manager comes and says, you're going to get us in a lot of trouble because you went and said exactly this. Like, I thought that was a safe space. Until I got to now study a lot and learn, oh, by the way, I believe that we should understand them first, understand where they're coming from and who they work for. They don't work for us. They work for the employer. They're also employers.
Okay.
They're also employees, sorry. So if we understand that, then we can have this little consideration and expectation because they're still human beings. Sometimes they're caught in this mix where, what should I do?
Yeah.
Someone has come to report a sexual harassment case. What am I supposed to do? Are they going to go online and say, hey, this company, are they going to say that? So at some point, I believe we can try and see where we can, I don't know where we can find the balance.
Where we can find a middle ground.
Yeah.
You mentioned consideration. Creating spaces that are considerate. Where do we begin?
We need to start this conversation with first internalizing that and accepting that, yes, toxic workspaces are there. I am in a toxic workspace. I am not okay. I can't reach out for help in my company or wherever. But that's where the conversation should start. First, you have to accept it because you cannot force people to open up and to discuss toxic workspaces. One, because NDAs that people just sign and they don't read what really means you cannot speak about it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why. So it's creating a safe space out of work. That's where the conversation should start. Online, no. I'm still going to say this loudly and proudly. Online safe spaces are an illusion. You can't create a safe space online. I can't come and openly say, hey, I was sexually assaulted by my boss. The backlash will be on me and not on that person. So we can't create safe space. The idea of a safe space is no one knows about it. So this whole thing of talk about it online, send an anonymous survey, doesn't work for me. And so conversations should happen and people should be aware that they're safe spaces, that they can come together collectively, talk about different struggles at work, and now to talk about their coping mechanisms.
Right.
Because I believe I can't go to my boss to say my manager assaulted me. Kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because I know how it ends. So that is how the conversations should start. First, people need to, but that's a struggle now. That's a struggle because I think people don't want to look like they're weak. I can't openly say I was in a toxic job because everybody will be like, no, you're strong. The idea of a safe space should be a place where no one knows about. So it doesn't make sense to me when people say, yes, you can create a safe space online so we can come and plug in and talk about it. I have programs that are offline. And No cameras, no pictures, because people feel safe to come and speak offline. Because that's the idea of a safe space. Because no one wants to see, my boss will see me at your event and they'll say I'm coming to gossip or rant about what happens at work.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I'm trying to now build up and push for such programs. They're really good. It works because now people feel safe and they can come and just pour it out, then listen to other people in different workplaces, talk about their struggles, why they can't speak to HR. Then a HR will come and say, I don't know why you guys do the things you think will save you, but we're here to save the company's name. So I think for me, as we talk about this conversation, yes, we can talk about it online to create awareness, but then now link these conversations to safe spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking about people taking their own power and engaging with what's going on, what would you recommend to someone who's really going through it? Is quitting the solution?
Tough. I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah.
Because we're different. We have different personalities. Millennials will quit. Millennials will quit and they'll start a startup in their garage tomorrow.
Yeah.
But then you can't expect someone who can start a business or who hasn't saved enough for a business to just quit. The idea of quitting, and this is something I keep saying, that we are not quite open and honest about quitting. Because quitting is a process. For me, it was a process. Because it starts with a thought. If I quit, what will I do? So now there comes the saving. Like for me, I had saved up for it. I knew I'm going to stop working. And then the what next? Because I can't tell someone to quit and save their mental health. Yes, I'm mindful about their well-being. But then do you have a solution? Do you have a plan B? Because if you quit now,
then what?
Yeah.
Right. So quitting is not necessarily the solution to all problems. And I can't help but think of this situation where we now find ourselves in. The job that you start with at the age of 21 or 22 or 23 or 24 is not what you're going to be working at 35, at 45. The nature of work has evolved. Mm-hmm. People aren't going to sit in one corporation for the rest of their lives. We're moving to project-based engagements. Employment now is, I've got a certain skill set, I'll come and work with you for X period of time, grow, learn, then move on to another project, grow, learn, move to another project. Toxicity in the workspace, do you see it lessening as a result of the evolving nature of work, or does it get even worse if you look at this new model?
When I look at the future of work, there's one thing we're not addressing. We're addressing changes at work. Yeah. We're talking about hybrid workplaces, mm-hmm. hybrid workers, mm-hmm. but they have not seen any research done on the future of toxic workspaces.
Right.
Why? Because I think they want it like that. Yeah. And then you look at, so millennials, once again, we are told we are entitled to a lot of things. I am the millennial who used to job hop a lot because I'm trying to look for, I want to work one project because it excites me. Once it's done, I want to leave. Not many people are like that.
Right.
But then maybe for people who are older than me, I've had this conversation with someone who was saying they don't trust millennials who job hop. Yeah. And then there's Naomi who's saying, at least I come with different skills from different projects in different companies. So where do we draw that line? Who do you pick as a manager? Do you want the Sheila who job hops because they look like they can't be trusted because now that's what it looks like? Or do you trust a Sheila who has been in a company for 20 years because they look loyal? So that's one thing. So when we are addressing the future of work, I've not had conversations or had managers speak about, hey, we are remodeling our programs and we are trying to come up with things that incorporate millennials in the modern workspaces. We've seen people struggle with remote working, and it's not the employees, it's the employer, because they believe value for their money. Like, I have to see Sheila working to know that she's working. And that's why we've seen fights of people taking pay cuts. It's not because there's no money, it's because the employer feels Sheila is busy watching Netflix. I should pay her less because she's not here. So that control is being taken away. Mm-hmm. And now toxicity moved from the office, it went remote.
Toxicity has also found a way to evolve.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of many conversations that I trust we shall be having, because if toxic spaces are evolving, then we must keep this conversation going. But let's talk about coping strategies in closing. For those who you need the check, quitting is not always the option. So what coping strategies, mechanisms, tools have you got to share as we wind up?
One of the things that I learned to do when I was in a toxic job was to disconnect. And I think that's what Unplug means. Because every Friday from 2 p.m., we never used to work. So I will just go offline until Monday. I couldn't deal with my job. Then I thought that's an idea. I've seen it work a lot of times because you disconnect to connect with yourself and to connect with others. Because now we're looking at the always on culture. So Unplug is a community of individuals who want to manage their always on life. It's people who feel like every weekend, I don't need to be on my email. I don't need to be on my laptop. I don't need to be on my devices. I can deal with work on Monday. Unfortunately, now with the always on culture, with remote working comes the digital, like, I don't know if it's the overload. I don't know what to call it, but it's becoming more messier because people tell me, I'd like to unplug with you, but I can't unplug with you because my boss will call me on Friday evening because probably he's in a different time zone. So you've been on a Zoom call from morning till evening, but because your boss, who doesn't want to understand you, has a meeting, their time is probably like 10 a.m. and you'll have to sacrifice till like 11 p.m. because you can't afford to say no.
Right.
So Unplug for me is one of the coping mechanisms that I've seen that's quite healthy. It's worked for me lots of times. And two, is like plugging into different support groups, like trauma healing programs that exist. But then you have to also call yourself out and say, I'm actually ready to join such a program because I feel ready to heal with like minds. We don't offer the balance, we offer the solutions, the coping mechanism.
Right.
Instead of like drinking yourself out, if that's the unhealthy thing you've adapted as a result of a toxic workspace, you can join our retreats, which we have, which is very interesting because like minds, and we don't talk about work. I refuse.
You talk about everything else that makes you human.
Exactly.
Your interests,
Yeah.
your hobbies, those things you're supposed to do outside of work.
Exactly. So I help you rediscover who you are
Right.
out of work. And I've seen it work for so many people who have been part of this. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we've had to slow down the retreats.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Because again, you don't want to have super spreader events because in essence, you never know with this pandemic. Thank you so much for making the time. It wasn't an easy recording, but thank you. Again, like I said, the first of many conversations on toxic workspaces. Please check her out online. I'm going to share details of all her social media sites so that you can get the help that you need. You don't have to struggle. You don't have to feel like you're alone. If you're waking up in the morning and you're feeling, iko kitu, and it can be solved. Thank you for catching up with us on this episode. Remember, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so now and hit notifications. We upload every Monday. Share this video with somebody who you think needs to know and drop us a comment in the comment section below if you like this video and if you learned something too. Until next week, I got to jet off again back to Diani Sea Lodge. Thank you for catching up with us and live out loud in all that you do. Bye for now.